Hello everyone, welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program 2 video sponsored by Incogni, more on them a little bit later on, but welcome, yes, to this video. It's kind of like a little bit of a return to form to when I used to make videos back in Kerbal Space Program 1. Indeed, one of the things I really enjoyed doing in that game was building colonies and, sending them out to various planets and moons, and I thought, it might be fun to do that in this video, because I realize I've not actually done this really at all in Kerbal Space Program 2. I think I've done like one Juna base, and that's it. So I thought, let's do a nice, ambitious mission. More than one launch. We're going to establish a full MUN colony, which is going to consist of the thing you can see being built on screen at the moment. The plan was a multiple launched surface base. Then we're going to have a station in orbit, a gateway station, if you will. And then we're going to send a direct ascent lander to firstly go to the MUN, dock with the orbiting space station, stay there, do some prep work before heading down to the surface, visiting this base that you can see me constructing. Maybe use the rover associated with the base, do some driving around, get some samples, do some sciencing, etc., and then go home, return. I'm not just going to leave the Kerbals stranded at the colony. Generally my surface colony missions could generally be considered just very elaborate stranding missions, but not this time. We will be bringing the Kerbals back. As you can see, we've just cut away to the next phase of this build, which is going to be the construction of the surface rover. Now, my intention was to launch the surface base in multiple phases. You could see how things would have joined together, right? There was essentially 3 segments. You got left tower, right tower, and then the bridge that connects the two. 3 separate launches, dock them together in low Kerbin orbit, and then use the boosters of the bridge section to ferry the whole thing to the MUN and land, and just have a great time, I guess. But I had a few Kraken attacks trying this out. I launched it as this was to make sure that the boosters that are attached to the bridge could actually propel this thing to the MUN, and it wobbled about quite a bit. I know wobbling KSP2 is much better than it was, but maybe the docking ports are freaking out. Either way, I needed to be able to strut all of the pieces together, and unlike in KSP1, you can't do that on the fly. You have to do that in the vehicle assembly building. So we're going to be assembling this as one big block. In fact, it's pretty much done. So let's cut to the ridiculous launch vehicle and launch. Yeah, sorry I didn't show the construction of the rocket itself, but I feel like this is going to be a long old video because, as mentioned, it's essentially 3 videos in one, right? 3 missions all in one video. How lucky are you? And so I thought, let's just show the interesting part of the build, which is the construction of the base. And you guys have seen me build rockets at this point. The rocket itself ain't really anything special. It's another SLS kind of style rocket in that it's powered by RS-25 equivalent engines, so in this case the Vector engine, with 2 big SRBs either side of the core stage. And then the upper stage is kind of weird. I had to sort of be very careful to make sure it aligned perfectly along the center of mass of the MUN surface colony, hence why it's all kind of precariously placed at the top of the stack in that exact position. So we are definitely firing fairly close to the center of mass. Now, we had a bit of an audio glitch just here. When the boosters detached, all the sound cut out, so I just throttled down the engines and throttled them back up, and as you can see, the sound has returned. So I'm not sure if there's a lesson to be learned there, but if you have a similar audio glitch, well, there you go, try that. And then we can just continue our way to orbit. We can speed the footage up to be nice and quick here to get things moving along. I'm just squinting at the screen, looking at the ridiculous payload, trying to think if there's anything specific I should have talked about during the build, but didn't, because the build, it went by pretty quickly, didn't it? I guess it's got all of the science equipment that I could fit into it. There's things like, obviously, the underwater experiment I didn't bother adding because, well, that should be obvious, right? But there's also things like I added the orbital survey experiment for some reason, because I forgot that I don't know how I forgot, but that can only be done when in orbit, so we can't run that one. I think there's a radiation experiment on there as well, but it doesn't matter. I'm doing this in a save file that has the tech tree fully unlocked. It's just, it's all just for funsies, really. Anyway, here we are planning our circularization around Kerbin. There are no Kerbonauts on board. This is all done with the onboard computers, which therefore meant my space agency didn't have to worry about hiring a Kerbal that potentially wasn't qualified for the job. We had an incident recently where a new recruit had actually just stolen the identity of a properly trained astronaut. That was a nightmare. If only the astronaut they stole the identity of was using Incogni, who have sponsored today's video. Incogni is a really great tool that I actually use myself. If you use the internet at all, then your data is out there, being traded around by brokers, and it can easily end up in the wrong hands, and end up causing you the denial of bank loans, inflated insurance rates, and you could even have your identity stolen. The Identity Theft Resource Center's 2022 Annual Data Breach Report found that the number of victims jumped by nearly 41.5% from the previous year. Incogni helps make sure that you stay protected from this. They will negotiate with data brokers on your behalf to remove you from their databases and wipe your data from the web, keeping your personal information where it belongs, with you. Incogni has a bunch of affordable pricing options. I really like their annual subscription, for which Incogni will keep continually sending removal requests to data brokers for as long as you're signed up, ensuring that your data stays removed. Ready to take the reins on your privacy? Then join the growing community saying goodbye to data breaches and hello to peace of mind. And the first 100 of you to use my code MATTLOWNE will get an incredible 60% off on Incogni's services. Click the link in the description to take control of your privacy with Incogni today. Sponsors like Incogni allow me to keep on producing content like this, so massive thanks to them for sponsoring this video. But with that out of the way, yes, it is time to start thinking about performing our circularization burn. So there goes the engine now burning away, and there we are. We are stabilized. We're circularized, in low Kerbin orbit. So the next phase of operations is setting a course for the MUN. Now I wanted to land, somewhere near the MUN's equator to make it just a bit easier when it comes to reaching the base from, low Kerbin orbit. It'd be much easier if the Gateway Station and the surface base are along the equator, so that the surface base is kind of always underneath the path of the orbiting space station, and it's just easier to reach an equatorial orbit, an equatorial MUN orbit, I should say, from an equatorial Kerbin orbit. Whew, that was tricky to say. So the footage might make things look deceptively smooth, but this thing was very, very sluggish to handle. Who'd have thought, right? I mean, it's massive, it's very big in terms of its surface area, and it's a very heavy old vessel, and I'm basically just relying on reaction wheels make it, turn on the spot, and reaction wheels in Kerbal Space Program 2 aren't always very good, so the footage for the most part of this video is going to be sped up to like 3 times or 4 times faster than real-time speed, just to keep things snapping along. So I'm only really saying this just so you know what I go through for you guys. So if that's not worthy of a little like down below, then I don't know what is. And of course, if you're not subscribed, ring the bell. I do Kerbal Space Program videos every Saturday and space news every Monday as well. But speaking of which, I was going to say, this was kind of like I said at the beginning, this video is kind of like a throwback to the videos I used to make in Kerbal Space Program 1, like making colonies and stuff. But, ironically, doing this mission just kind of made me want to just go back to KSP1 for a bit. Because, while KSP2 is night and day, an improvement over what it was when it first launched in February 2023, there are still a few glitches, and those glitches did rear their ugly head by doing a complicated mission like this. Well, I say complicated, it isn't that complicated. It's complicated in the sense that there's lots of different individual components. I had quite a few Kraken attacks, visual bugs, lots of messy things, and it just got to the point where I was like, I'm wasting so much time trying to undo these bugs that didn't exist in Kerbal Space Program 1. I might just go back to Kerbal Space Program 1 videos. Oh, by the way, I've detached this stage before it ran out of fuel. It's got a probe core and an RCS unit and a battery and all that, so it can deorbit itself and crash into Kerbin, not leaving debris in space. Because I know I've not been very good, have I? My past few videos, I've been leaving a lot of space junk, so I apologize profusely. I'm trying to change my ways there, so there you go. Deorbiting that bit of space junk. But yeah, like I said, I just had a lot of glitches that they're gonna make manifest in kind of the final phase of this video. We'll be sending Kerbals to visit both the orbiting space station and the surface base. There's just a lot of things, and I've been cheating on Kerbal Space Program 1 for a bit. I mean, granted, I do have some big plans for Kerbal Space Program 1 videos coming up. Next Saturday, I'm hoping should be a Kerbal Space Program 1 video, because do you guys remember that controller video I did where I had this big custom controller commissioned and built for me and I showcased it? That video did really well actually, so I'm guessing a lot of you guys liked that video. Well, I'm going to do another one. I've had a new controller built. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's like I haven't just thrown one out and got one of them. I've had one of the... So a few... I really should have written all this down for us that I just like vomiting up this like stream of consciousness into the microphone. But basically, there were 2 controller units, right? There's a big one and there's a little one. The little one only had 2 units. The little one is going to grow. It is going to expand. It's going to have more units. I got some experimental units built by Codapop, the guy who makes the controllers, for me to try out, like a big throttle lever. There's like an LCD panel for me to try out as well, so it shows like the fuel gauges. It looks... I haven't wired up the electronics yet. This is why I'm hoping it's going to be next Saturday. There's every chance I might botch something up and needs to get it repaired. So I'm hoping it's going to be next Saturday, but I can't guarantee that just yet. But that is my hope. And I have promised Codapop that it should be next Saturday. So there's no pressure, you know. So that's going to be a fun whole thing to showcase. And I kind of want to showcase a few more mods. Like now I've kind of... The novelty of Kerbal Space Program 2's For Science mode is starting to wear off a little bit. Like, I'm still really enjoying playing it, but I'm looking at, like, views, and my views have sort of been tapering down throughout the course of 2024, because I'm guessing the novelty again has worn off for KSP2's For Science mode. People just kind of want the next big update, so everyone's just sort of not really playing the game, not interested in it until that big update comes. And, you know, that was another reason, actually, why I wanted to make this video, like with this colony, because the next big update for Kerbal Space Program 2, supposedly, is going to be the big colony update, which is therefore going to render this method of constructing bases, you know, building something in the VAB and KSP, I don't know why I had to specify KSP actually, but building something in the KSP... Building something in the VAB, launching it, maybe assembling it in orbit potentially, or assembling it on the surface of the planet or moon, wherever you want to go, building it that way. Instead, I don't really know how things are going to work. There's going to be a lot more in-situ resource utilization in KSP2, so you kind of launch to planets and moons. My understanding, at least, is you just launch to the planets and moons carrying just the raw materials and means to build the colony, and then your Kerbals just construct it like in situ, and you get like proper bespoke buildings that you could never realistically, at least, fly from the surface of Kerbin to the surface of where you're going. So that's going to make buildings like this, where I have built it on Kerbin and flown it to the MUN, a bit obsolete. I don't know, though. I don't know any more than you guys. Like, people are so like, Matt, what's happening with the development of KSP2? Like, guys, I don't know any more than you guys do. So, but that's my general understanding of the colonies in KSP2. And here we are, touching down with mine. I dropped the rover at the last second so that we didn't just crush its wheels, because I realized the wheels of the rover are actually slightly below the bases of the towers. And then we can ditch the sky crane, you know, the side boosters. Bit of a visual glitch there. We had a plume just lingering on the surface, so I pressed F5 to make a quick save, and then in a second I'm going to hit F9. I think I was just waiting to see if it would disappear on its own, but it didn't. So we can press F9, and Robert, your father's brother, it's gone. And there we go, we got the surface base. I think that looks quite nice. I'm trying to like, I'm always like building the same base in Kerbal Space Program. Like, I always just build a tower and then just like towers radially attached to it. So now I've got a tower with just one tower. So I'm evolving my design, but I don't know. I really liked how this one came out. Like, this looks like like it could be real. I don't know, but I really liked how this base came out. And then I'm just going to take the rover for a little spin as well. The main purpose of the rover is just so that if you, if I didn't manage to land near the base, and it would be a bit unrealistic to expect Kerbals to walk there, we've got the rover. They can just go autonomously drive over to the lander, pick the Kerbals up, and then drive them to the base. One at a time. There's only one seat in the rover, which might have been a design oversight, but regardless, doesn't matter. I don't care. Let's move on. So now it's time to begin construction of Phase 2 of the MUN Gateway Surface Colony Adventure. That's the name of this video, by the way. We're going to construct the orbiting Gateway Station. So I, of course, had to have a cupola module. You can't build a space station without a cupola, right? And I added the new Orbital Science Laboratory module because, you know, why not? I feel like that it's intended to be a essential part of any space station in Kerbal Space Program 2. Then I just added this big crew module to the bottom, and then some like arms. In my head, kind of these like, I don't know, individual dorms for the 3 Kerbals, and then one is like the toilet or something. Don't know. I didn't really put that much thought into the design of this. I just thought it looked pretty cool. And then we need to build some big long arms onto which we can attach some solar panels to keep this thing charged. I'm guessing you guys know what solar panels do, so I don't really know why I felt the need to specify that. But again, I think, it's a fairly simple construction, right? If you didn't realize this is another monolithic single launch type thing. One of the things I find myself missing more than I thought I would in KSP1, or from KSP1, is the lack of robotic parts in KSP2. And I'm guessing it's going to be a long while before we get robotic parts because they were added very late on in KSP1's development cycle. KSP2 was already in development itself when robotic parts were added to KSP1. So I think it's going to be several years before we get them. But it was just really cool, being able to just have things like solar panels on arms folded up against the rocket, and then when you're there at your destination, you can then press the button and the hinges open it all out. So it's nice and realistic. You haven't got to have these awkward metal things sticking out the edges of the rocket like I got there with those where the solar panels are and where the satellite dishes are. So yeah, I don't know why I felt the need to just inject that negativity there, but again, big dumb rocket that I just built. We're about to launch. Here we go. So this being a slightly smaller and less wobbly with less docking ports, fewer docking ports I should say, let's get the grammar correct, eh? The performance of the game was much better than it was when I launched the surface colony, but that doesn't mean I can't speed the footage up to keep things nice and flowing, punchy, so it's a bit more of an enjoyable video. Oh wow, we're already 60 minutes in. So yeah, lots of progress has been made. I'm trying to now look at the screen if there's anything specific I needed to mention. Perhaps the fact that, I may be speaking the obvious, but it's not a particularly aerodynamic payload. And I couldn't get a bearing around it because that's probably obvious. And so this thing wasn't the most stable in flight. Shocker, I know. So I've got the Vector engines there with their default gimbal range. So they're very, very high gimbal level just so that we can counteract the effects of the atmosphere wanting to spin this out of control. However, small caveat to that, when at main engine cutoff, suddenly the craft wants to spin out of control, which is kind of weird because we are very high up in the atmosphere. The atmosphere is very thin at this point as we approach the 50-kilometer altitude mark. So it was a bit strange the rocket was still, so aerodynamically unstable that it would just spin out of control. In fact, main engine cutoff is about to occur as our Delta V clocks down. Here we go. I think it's 3, 2, 1. And yeah, then the rocket just started to... But it doesn't look like loss of control type of spin. I've sped the footage up because it was very, very slow as I tried to write this thing with SAS. Yeah, wasn't that weird? We are at 0 Delta V, so I guess I could have just staged. But I wanted to stage so that the engine bell of the next phase, next stage of the rocket didn't clip through the fairings. That looks a bit unrealistic, doesn't it? And if I stage it like that, it kind of looks like nothing went wrong. And with that, let's move on. So I've plotted my circularization maneuver plan, and then we can we're already there, look at that. So we're going to execute that now. There we are, beautiful stuff. And then we can go ahead and plot a course to the MUN. So like I mentioned earlier, I wanted the surface base to be, at the moon's equator, and so we kind of want the space station to be along the moon's equator as well, because it's easier if the station is, the orbit of the space station is always above the surface base. By that I mean the surface base is always below the orbit line of the space station, so that when crew disembark the station, get into the lander, you can literally just burn retrograde and you've got to think about doing normal and anti-normal adjustments. You will just descend on a path that takes you over the surface base and, get a nice encounter. It wasn't perfect when we do the crew part of the mission, which is going to be in this video, don't worry, I'm not going to do a map pat surprise. Join us in part 2, ba-bum, type thing. We're going to do that in this video. Don't worry, it's going to be a complete video. And yeah, I do have to do a small what's the word called, inclination change, but it's not a big deal. I don't even know why I'm drawing attention to it, to be honest, especially because now when that part of the video comes up, I'm not going to have anything to say because I just talked about it for this. Although, is there anything I can talk about now? Although, actually, I think I'm on a free return trajectory, actually. Which is kind of ironic, because I very rarely, if ever, put my MUN missions on a free return trajectory. By that I mean, if, for example, now on the way to the moon, our engine blows up or fails, we'll just swing past the moon, and then we'll just end up re-entering Kerbin's atmosphere, and everything's fine. This is what the Apollo astronauts did. Well, the course they plotted and put themselves on, so that if there was an Apollo 13 style event at the moon, they didn't have to worry about doing anything. They would just coast back to Earth, and it was all safe and fine. I never really do this in KSP because I'm always too lazy to plan for that, and yeah, I'm just lazy. So, but this time I just happened without even trying to do it, which is ironic because this vehicle is never going to return to Kerbin. I hope. Hopefully the engine works. I see it is burning, so it is indeed working. So yeah, the one mission I don't actually intend to bring back to Kerbin is the one I accidentally put it on a free return trajectory. So I don't know what that says about my competency levels in Kerbal Space Program. So now we've got a capture around the MUN. I like my space stations to be in a very precise, more or less exactly circular orbit. By that I mean the apoapsis and periapsis heights are about the same, at least, you know, within 1 kilometer of each other. And I was aiming for 30 kilometers in altitude. For any kind of MUN space station, it's best practice to have it definitely above 10 kilometers, because below 10 kilometers your time warp is severely limited. Like only the first 3 notches, which, trust me, is a glacial pace. So you want it above 10 kilometers, and 10 kilometers it's rather unrealistically low. But 20 kilometers, that's skirting a bit too close to 10 kilometers. 30 seems like a nice, good, happy ground. Happy ground? Happy medium? I don't know. Anyway, we've achieved that now. Whilst I was waffling through all of that, I then detached that engine stage, and like the stage for the colony, this was ages ago in the video now, but hopefully you remember, it had a probe core, battery, solar panels, so it could basically just deorbit itself, crash into the surface of the MUN, not leave any debris in space. And there is the deployment of the solar panels. I do notice at the moment the space station is upside down. I want the cupola module to face, you know, down towards the surface of the moon, and then obviously the solar panels will be at the top of the stack as well, so there's less occlusion from the rest of the space station. There we are now, pointing radial in. Sadly, it ain't going to last. Kerbal Space Program 2 doesn't maintain like persistent orientation of ships. When we meet the space station later on, it's going to be spinning out of control. So that's, again, another spoiler. Well, I don't know what I'm going to talk about when we get to that phase in the mission, which is now rapidly approaching, because as you can see, we've cross-faded to the vehicle assembly building for the final time to construct the last phase of this mission, but hopefully the most fun phase of this mission. That is the crewed portion. So I'm starting off by building an Apollo-style capsule with a launch escape system and a fairing to occlude the capsule, which I haven't built yet by the looks of things, but I have placed the fairing plate. I'll build the fairing later on, I'm sure. Well, I mean, I know I built the fairing right because I've done the mission. And then, yeah, it's just powered by the Poodle engine. It's not a very, you know, special design or anything. It's direct ascent, because direct ascent in Kerbal Space Program 2 actually makes a lot more sense than Apollo style, just because of the scales of Kerbin and the MUN versus the scale of Earth and the Moon. It's like way easier to do direct ascent. Apollo style, I mainly do that because it's just a bit more fun for me. Just trying to fill the empty black void that is my heart. I do Apollo style MUN missions. That got dark real fast, didn't it? As you can see, I'm just dotting the I's, crossing the T's with the lander. I have now, I can see I have now built the fairing. I replaced the landing legs and some ladders. We don't need ladders for the MUN because the gravity is low enough that the Kerbals can overcome surface gravity with their EVA packs, but if they run out of fuel, well, now they can climb the ladder. And with that, let's launch. So yeah, like I say, you can't really get much more simple in terms of a rocket, right? Just a medium diameter single stack booster, kind of like a tribute to the Delta 2, because it's blue, the first stage, I mean. That's really the only semblance. It doesn't look like a Delta 2, really, but it's a tenuous link to sort of, you know, pay homage to the fact that the Delta family. Oh, I also noticed, you may have noticed, speaking of glitches earlier, the ocean disappeared, which has not happened to me since I played Kerbal Space Program 2 in Amsterdam, like before the game was out for the general public, when it was in that state. That's the only time. So I don't know, is it just back? Or have I just been super unlucky and have just revived a bug that doesn't really happen to people anymore? I'm not quite sure what I did to induce this Kraken attack, but it just happened nonetheless. I thought it looked kind of funny though, and this is the third launch we've done in this video, and so to make things a bit more interesting, you know, keep things a bit more unique between launches, we'll leave it without water for now. But yes, that core stage, which is now gone, great. But I was going to say, it's the color scheme is a tribute to the Delta 2, because of course the Delta family of rockets is now retired as of last week when the final Delta 4 Heavy launch. Can you believe there are only 16 Delta 4 Heavies? It feels like such a legendary rocket, and in fact it's only launched, you know, as many times as Falcon 9 launches in 1 month. It seems sometimes. Maybe a little bit more than 1 month, because it's about, I think Falcon 9 averages 2 to 3 launches per week. Sometimes it squeezes that 4th one in, so if we say 2 months, you know, that's a bit more of an equivalency. But yes, it's nonetheless, Delta IV Heavy is a very legendary rocket. One of my favorites. I love seeing Delta IV Heavy launches. The way it sets fire to itself, unbeatable really. So yeah, that's gone. So Delta IV Heavy is retired, as has the entire Delta family. So yeah, Delta II tribute somewhere in that was somewhere in this, something in this mission was a thoughtful thing. I don't know, doesn't matter. Anyway, let's just move on from that very awkward tangent and plot our course to the MUN. Now, I tried to be all savvy and set the space station as our target from low Kerbin orbit. My plan being we would get our encounter from low Kerbin orbit and get our rendezvous. So basically, we don't even circularize at the MUN. Well, I mean, we circularize at the MUN, but when we finish our circularization, we are also exactly at the space station. But I couldn't do it. Like, I don't know if it's a patched Connix thing, that there's a setting I need to meddle with, or if just KSP can't do this yet. But I just couldn't get any encounter nodes to appear, which is a shame because you could do this in Kerbal Space Program 1. I remember vividly when me and Beardy Penguin went to do that esports challenge that we won. We got encounters with our Lunar Gateway Station whilst we were still in orbit of Earth. I guess you can't do that in KSP2 until you're actually in the moon's sphere of influence. I've been chopping and changing between moon and MUN, haven't I? Someone's going to mention it in the comments, but you guys, you know, shut up, you know. It's just the same. It doesn't matter. You guys know. You guys, you knew what I meant. Anyway, here we are arriving in the sphere of influence of the moon, which I've said it again, moon, which means we can now plot an encounter. Nope. I guess I'm circularizing first, so I'm not going to go for a low MUN orbit because, as you can see, we need to do a bit of an inclination change to get a perfectly equatorial, or at least equatorial in line with the space station. And if you're doing an inclination change, it's better to do that higher up in your orbit versus close to the surface of the planet or moon you're orbiting. Just saves a bit of delta V that way. So I'm creating a maneuver at my ascending node so we can perform our inclination adjustment, and then once we've done that, we can then plan an encounter with the space station. As long as our orbit intersects with the space station's orbit, which, as you can see, it does. After that, all you have to do is make a maneuver plan at the point just after the bit where your orbits cross, and just drag and retrograde, and the encounters will just swing around and around and around, and then just stop when they're next to each other. Adding in a bit of cheeky fine-tune adjustment there, and look at that, we've got a pretty close separation there, less than a kilometer, which is what I want really. Have to bear in mind though that we're doing the maneuver node, probably not going to be perfect, might have to do a bit more fine-tuned adjustment, but in this case, worked out even better. We're now less than half a kilometer away from, you know, our target. So this is nice and easy. We can just time warp down with the nav ball obviously set to be relative to target. And then when we're in range, point retrograde. Oh, there's the space station there. So we are indeed. We have visual confirmation. And we can go ahead and dock. Now, normally when I do dockings in Kerbal Space Program 1 or Kerbal Space Program 2, I often do something that's sort of been dubbed the Lowne lazy method of docking, in that we have both vessels contribute equally to the docking process, have both vessels target each other automatically, and as they coast towards each other, they will just automatically maintain alignment. Dead easy to dock without monopropellant or anything like that, but I feel like wouldn't really be in the spirit of things doing that this time, because this is a space station. Stationary is, that's not why it's called a space station, but station could be short for stationary, so let's pretend I don't know. I'm really tired, guys. I'm sorry. But I just thought it might be, you know, a bit more realistic and in the spirit of things to just use the Apollo capsule, that's what I'm calling it, to do the docking using the monopropellant on board. Now, you might be wondering, where is the monopropellant coming from? Because there aren't any monopropellant tanks on this thing. And you are correct, but the command pod has a very small reserve of monopropellants, 0.12 tons. So not very much, but, you know, if we can get a nice accurate docking, we won't need that much monopropellant, so it's fine to use that. And sort of haven't done this in a while, to be fair, so it took me a few trials and errors. In case you never docked like this and wondering how I'm doing this, you can use H and N for forwards and backwards, and IJKL instead of ASDW to perform your, like, you know, transmutation movements. Is that the right word? Lateral movements, up and down, left and right. Let's make it dumb it down for me. But yeah, we have now docked. It was kind of a weird docking, wasn't it? They weren't aligned at all, and then suddenly, bam, we just teleported to be docked. So I'll take it. So this is just like the experimental run, right? This is the qualification test. We haven't going to spend that much time on the space station, so about an orbit, I think, is sufficient for the purposes of this mission. Now we can undock and point retrograde. Because our space station did not maintain radial in alignment, we're now in a bit of an awkward spot where we're going to be, burning the solar panels of the station with our lander's engine. So some very, very, conservative burns just there. Very, very small amount of power. Just to make sure we get clear of the station without inflicting too much heating damage to it. And then I did a bigger burn. Too big of a burn, in fact, to get further and further away. So I had to point prograde again, just so that we'd actually not be undershooting our target. You want to be overshooting it, so that when you perform your braking maneuver, like final slowdown, you're not going to then undershoot. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. So yeah, now I'm just using the map screen to kind of figure out my alignment, how to get to the surface base. And there's going to be a fair amount of back and forthing when it comes to arriving at the surface. I wasn't really being accurate at all. I knew I had a lot of delta V. In fact, I don't really have that much, right? Like, I like to touch down. This happened like last video as well, where I ended up landing on the moon with very little delta V remaining. I usually like to try and have more than 1 kilometer per second of delta V remaining when on the surface of the MUN, just to ensure I definitely have enough to get back to MUN orbit and indeed back to the surface of Kerbin. But like last week's video, I once again landed with less than 1 kilometer per second. I mean, it was fine, we had enough, but I always get a bit nervous when the budgets are that tight. So here we are coming down for our final approach, getting closer and closer to both the surface base and the rover. And this is kind of where, I said earlier that, this video kind of made me want to go back to KSP1 because there were so many glitches. You might be wondering, well, there haven't been that many glitches, Matt. Like, it's all been pretty good so far. This is kind of the point where things started to go right. I mean, it wasn't even that bad. I think I was just at the end of my tether because it was a long day. Summer is approaching in the UK. Every summer I complain about the temperature of my office because we have air conditioning in the UK and all of our houses are designed to retain heat, and I have a big beefy computer that kicks out loads of heat, so I get grouchy when it's hot. And I think towards the end of the mission I was like, I just want this to work, so I'm gonna have a cold shower. Anyway, as we've touched down, glossed over that, didn't I? Before we get another Kerbal out to get into the surface base, I thought I'd just time warp a bit to better lighting levels so you can see what's going on a bit more. This ended up being that, Valentina and Bill just spent 2 MUN days sitting in the lander, and they could have gone to this beautiful 5-star hotel on the surface of the MUN. I think it looks... I really wish we had first-person view in Kerbal Space Program 2. I know we kind of do if you choose the camera for some of the cockpits, but none of the cockpits in the surface base, unfortunately. And then right before Valentina gets out, she made sure to deploy the solar panels of the lander so that it doesn't run out of battery whilst we're not using it. So that's all good. So it should be nice and safe to just leave there indefinitely until we need to use it again. And there is Valentina getting into the surface base. And then I noticed that, the rover, which I did not leave the rover like that, has flipped itself. And this is kind of where, look at this. Look at this wheel physics. Like, wheels and rovers were generally really bad in Kerbal Space Program 1. They acted more like skis and pogo sticks and, glitch machines rather than, wheels. But it looks like they're worse somehow in KSP2. And I was like, really? We really didn't fix this when we made this sequel? Like, wheels? Like, well, first of all, wobble wasn't fixed until like a year, which is one of the biggest problems. And also, wheels still haven't been fixed. And I feel like having rovers that work is a really integral part of the colony system for KSP2. But this isn't even the worst of it. This is kind of what actually made me genuinely worried for colonies, because look, I don't know what happened, but now we are just spinning around under the surface of the MUN, and I couldn't recover it. And the game just made a quick save. I didn't make that quick save, so I don't know what the game was doing to auto-save like that. But in the end, I had to load a previous quick save. I then got the lighting just right, using time warp, to get a nice little thumbnail shot, potentially, of the whole colony setup and all that. And then look, did you see it? Blink and you miss it. It's gone. Magic trick. The rover had disappeared into the surface once again. So I thought, right, we'll try one more time. I know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, but why was I even getting that result? Like, what's happening? I wish I could understand what Unity is doing to make the rover do that. And it seems to be when I drop out of time warp. So I thought I'll pause whilst we're on time. We'll just get a nice shot and then up. So I don't know if the rover is going to feature in the thumbnail of this video because it kept on disappearing whenever I was trying to take pictures. But maybe I got one, or I could just screen cap the video the millisecond before the rover disappears. But yeah, that's kind of the bittersweet part of the video, really. But yeah, that made me actually really worried about the future of KSP2. So anyway, I went and ran some errands, came back to this quick save, and now I got this glitch where the strut is all wrong and parts of the surface base are outside of the surface base, if you can see. So I'm now going to play in real time the number of quick loads I had to do to make the thing appear normal. So I was using the strut between the two towers as the reference as to whether or not this thing had loaded okay. Nope, still diagonal there. Go to another load. Here we go. Is it going to load properly again? Nope, it's still bits of the ship outside of the ship. So we're going to do another quick load. And wait for it. Let's see. Okay, finally. Finally it's done. But my goodness, like this glitch has been in the game since day 1 of early access. And surely it can't be that tricky to diagnose and, rectify the source of. It just seems to me like this shouldn't still be in the game, right? But then I thought, you know what? Okay, the rover seems very, very determined to nope itself out of existence. So let's just take advantage of it while it's here and go for a little drive. One of the earlier on in the early access, I said that one of the things I really wanted KSP2 to fix from KSP1 was the wobbly rocket problem. The other one I really wanted fixed was the rover issue, because wheels in KSP1 are awful. They function more like ice skates or skis rather than normal wheels. So I thought hopefully KSP2, especially because rovers feature, well, there is a rover that features very heavily in the official KSP2 trailer, and colonies are going to be very dependent on roving units, I would have thought. Hopefully it finally fixes that weird ice skate wheel physics that rovers suffer, but actually it seems to just be worse somehow than KSP1. Like, this is the moment when my rover crashed. Ready? Footage is now slowed down to real-time speed. There, look. Some weird phantom force was enacted upon the rover, and then from there on, there was just no recovering it. I'm not putting any inputs into the keyboard right now. I'm just watching helplessly as this thing just continues to just put itself into some sort of death tumble. Like, every time the wheels touch the MUN surface at a weird angle, it enacts some sort of phantom velocity to the rover. Like, this is insane. Like, rover physics are one of the most contentious things in KSP1, and it's somehow worse in KSP2. Like, my faith in this game was massively restored with the 4 Science update, don't get me wrong, but things like this just get me worried. How tricky has it been to do this mission without the rover just sinking through the surface of the MUN? And even when it's here, look again! Even when it's here, it still doesn't even work. Hopefully, there's a fix. But part of me is worried that, is this just a problem to do with Unity and how it handles physics? I am by no means a game developer or anyone that's really familiar well with game engines, but a lot of people raised concerns that the team making KSP2 were going with Unity again despite its physics restrictions. Is this a Unity thing? And should they have just used something like Unreal Engine or something else? I don't know. I'm very, very unqualified to make statements like this, so don't consider that to mean anything in this context. But I'm just saying, like, it's just, like, how is this still in the game? So then I obviously righted the rover. I'm going to speed the footage back up to see where we next went wrong. Oh, here we go. Okay, so admittedly this time I wasn't driving, the most carefully, but the way the rover reacts to this situation, I feel like it wouldn't be this floaty in real life. Like, it wouldn't just float off like this. It would maintain some kind of stability, and most of the tumbling we're doing now is due to the way the wheels are interacting with the ground. Like, is there like the what's it called? The collision mesh of the wheels is not in the right position, so there's no collision on like the very outermost edges of the wheels when they hit the ground, hubcap first. I have no idea, but as you can see, the rover is gradually falling apart. So at this point I was like, you know what, we've done enough driving, let's just try and nurse this thing back to the surface colony. So I'm going to speed the footage up again just to kind of get things moving along so we can get to the next thing that went wrong. The thing, like, the rover physics are just very, very unforgiving. Like, okay, I might not be driving the most carefully, but then all of the problems come from the aftermath where, like, the rover just does this, like, self-induced death dance on the surface of the MUN. Maybe it's just these specific wheels. Maybe more testing needs to be done. I certainly don't have the spirit to do those tests myself. But hey, maybe one of you can. And let me know in the comments below if you've done experiments in rover wheel physics trying to get them to work properly. But there is the surface base looming ahead. But I must admit, we didn't actually finish the drive. Because as you can see, on the peak of the mountain or hill, whatever, mesa, maybe, the edge of the crater, behind the surface base, there's an interesting looking rock. You see it? I was like, oh, that's a jolly interesting old looking rock. Let's go ahead and have a look at it, shall we? It's only a short drive, right? So it should be a fairly inconsequential journey to have to make. I did make a tactical quick save just there, though, in case the rover disappeared into the ground as we crossed over this part of the MUN surface next to the surface base where the rover, continually kept on disappearing before. So I decided to carefully drive it underneath the bridge, but then we had a bit of a phantom force enacted on us and we ended up drifting underneath it. And now we're once again doing the little death dance where the rover can't seem to right itself because every time the wheels hit the ground, it just does this. And enabling the brakes, by the way, makes the problem worse, at least for me. In case anyone's wondering, why don't you just turn the brakes on so the wheels aren't spinning? Because it's probably that. At least for me, that didn't fix it. Maybe I was just unlucky, I'm not sure. But I seem to have better results by just leaving the brakes off and just letting the rover come to a natural standstill. Anyway, now that's all back under control. Let's speed the footage back up and continue our journey to the MUN rock. As you can see, I think I might have spoken too soon. The rover did continue rolling just then, didn't it? But that's all watchable in fast-paced. I just want to get the rover shenanigans out of the way. I want to see this cool rock. It better be cool after all the suffering I've gone through to get to it. We can check it out and just have a fun old time, I suppose, with our MUN colony. And the rover that's just like completely fallen apart, hasn't it? There was a bit of a precarious ridge just here. Did we clear it? Yes, we did. It was all fine. No problems whatsoever. And here we are clearing the last ridge before we get to that cool-looking MUN rock. Just this one more little descent to manage. And there we are. As you can see, it's a rock. I don't think it was really worth it, to be honest. And oh! Oh, my hubris! I'm punished not only with a disappointing rock formation, but once again, loss of control of the rover. So at this point, you know what? I think I'm satisfied with the surface antics I've achieved at my MUN colony. The rover is certainly on its last legs. And so it's just doing its death dance altogether. So let's just get back to the surface colony and not mess around anymore. Let's get back there and then get the Kerbals back in the lander and just get them home. I think they're all very traumatized from watching this voodoo sequence with the rover. Oh my god, it's ridiculous. It does look a bit worse than it was in real life because I've sped the footage up to be 4 times faster than real-time speed because I value you guys' time. And I didn't want to cut anything out just because I really wanted to highlight just how absurd the rover physics seem to be, at least for this very specific rover design. So I'll just keep all this glitching in just for your own entertainment. I've recorded it, may as well show it. And now we're, for now at least, rightened. We can nurse this thing back to the surface colony, and bit of a slip just there. Don't worry, no one saw. That's why I've got reaction wheels, by the way, on the rover. I know you don't need reaction wheels, and in fact they make things worse if you put them on a rover. But just disable the torque, and then if your rover ever flips over, just enable the torque, and then you have a self-righting rover. Once it's back up, just disable the torque once again, and bish bash bosh, you can continue along your merry way. And here we are, arriving at the surface base. And then this was the kicker. Despite the fact that Valentina Kerbin could get on board the rover, she can't disembark the rover because the hatch is blocked. But if the hatch was blocked, how was she able to enter? And also, is the hatch blocked? So I'm guessing the parameters for whether or not a hatch is obstructed in Kerbal Space Program 2 differs depending on whether you're inside or outside the vehicle. So after all that driving, I couldn't even, it was all for nothing. I had to load a quick save to a point where Valentina hadn't yet got into the cursed rover. So that's, what a terrible disappointment that was. We're going to load this quick save here. And we've got that visual glitch again, haven't we? See the red tower? There's those bits just floating next to it. And I think the strut between the towers is all glitched out as well. So do a quick save and we'll do another quick load. and see if we can fix it. Here we go. Let's see if that worked. It did not. The strut is all wrong, and bits of the tower are still floating outside the tower. So let's do a quick save and another quick load. Show this in real time. Suffer with me, and all that. Nope, still not fixed. Let's do it. Let's press F9 one more time. Hopefully this should definitely be it. Let's see. Aha! It's fine. It's really weird. Like, I was just loading the same quick save over and over, so I don't know what keeps going wrong in the game that makes it sometimes fix the... Like, that's the really frustrating thing with glitches in Kerbal Space Program 2, is that they really just seem to defy all logic. And it's really hard to figure out, like, what do you need, game? What is it that you need from me? What do I need to do so that you don't do this? Because clearly, you know, I believe in you. You can do this because, you know, you sometimes loads fine, but other times it doesn't. And I'm not doing anything differently with the methodology. So, yeah, just very, very, very weird. Anyway, let's just speed the footage up whilst our Kerbals are doing the fairly boring to watch task of getting from the surface colony into the lander. But yeah, like I say, KSP2 somehow made KSP1 look like a stable game. I'm hopeful that, you know, as the patches roll out, you know, these silly glitches will get ironed out. But it's like, oh, come on. This is so frustrating. But, you know, hopefully it was all worth it for your own enjoyment. And this is kind of like a cool little extended mission. Like, I've not done a bit like a lot of my recent Kerbal Space Program 2 videos have been fairly short, haven't they? So we've done a nice big long mission for once. I hope it was enjoyable. As we say goodbye to, what should we call the base? I feel like it's too late. We've left it now. Kraken Base Alpha, maybe a fitting name. Clearly something has possessed it. So best we put as much distance between us and it as we possibly can, which is a fairly large distance, right? We're going to literally a different celestial body. Our home celestial body, in fact. So hopefully we should be safe from the Kraken there, right? Although that being said, when I launched this mission, oh, it was like an omen, wasn't it? The oceans had, you know, evaporated. The Kraken had left. The Kraken lives in the ocean. We angered it by not reverting the save or whatever to bring the ocean back, and that must have made the Kraken angry. So I think that's probably why I was having all those glitches in this mission, to be fair. Clever old developers. You knew exactly what was... So, yeah, I don't know what to say about that, really. As you can see, we have now plotted our course back to Kerbin. And, yeah, hopefully there's water. Obviously, there's water on the map screen, but there was water on the map screen before. The model of Kerbin in the map screen is obviously not the same model as Kerbin, like Kerbin. So, who knows if there's actually oceans when we re-enter its atmosphere. Time will tell, I suppose, as we do our final bit of time warping down to get there. And it looks fairly promising. It looks like the water has returned. Nature is healing. The Kraken hopefully has a place to live once again. Finally go see its wife and children again. So there we are. We've hopefully pleased the Kraken. It's had its fun playing and destroying our rover and making me miserable. So now I've hopefully made the Kraken happier. As we descend, it was a very steep re-entry. We had a bit of a temperature gauge flicking up just there. But the heat shields are fairly resilient in this game, and we were only coming in from the height of the MUN, which isn't really that far, and therefore our speed is not that high, so I knew we'd be safe. Let's speed the footage up down until we get to the next eventful part of the flight, which is, of course, deployment of the parachutes. So there they go. And then we can touch... I mean, are we splashing down in the ocean? But the oceans have dried up? Well, no, I think we... No, I forget I said that. Well, we saw the oceans were there on our way down, didn't we? I'm just getting delirious, guys. It's like another Matt Lowne nearly hour-long special. And, like, whenever I do really long videos like this, you know that my, you know, sanity just completely deteriorates to nothing by the end of it. And by the end, I'm just rocking back and forth in my chair, just drooling. But, yeah, don't know what there was to say about that, really. If you want to give me money to support this content, then I always do really appreciate it. I have a Patreon page, and, you know, really helps me to keep on doing what I do here. In all sincerity now, thank you guys so much that did sign up. Also, on screen is an end card things. There's 2 videos on my channel that you think you'll like. Hopefully they are good picks. One of them, statistically, should be my Kit Hack Model Club video, which I did with a Harvester, creator of Kerbal Space Program 1. And click that if it sounds good. But, yep, that is the end of the video. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.